120,000 stories buried in the sand. 120,000 stories. 120,000 stories buried in my skin. 120,000 stories. They called it camp, but it wasn't summer. Wind and sand blew away our lives. I was 2 years old, a yellow barrel, a potential spy. At Santa Anita racetrack, where the rich once watched their horses run, we slept in a horse stall. The soldier watched us with his gun. Oh, Roja.
Welcome to this discussion we're about to have about the stories and the collaboration behind this amazing new album, 120,000 Stories, featuring Nobuko Miyamoto. I'm so happy all of you are here today. This is going to be an amazing hour, and I'm just so glad that you're joining us. My name is Deborah Wong. I'm a bunch of things. I'm an ethnomusicologist. I am a faculty member at the University of California, Riverside. I'm the former chair of the board for the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage at the Smithsonian. I'm an advisor to Folkways' new Asian Pacific America series that you're going to be hearing more about. And I love talking about and with musicians about, what they do and how they do it and why they do it. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So I am in my happy place, and I'm going to be for the next hour here. A few housekeeping matters. There is real-time live captioning and American Sign Language interpretation, which is going to be available through today's live program. To view the simulcast that includes these services, please use the link provided in the comments section. And if you're viewing this program after the live broadcast, and it will be available, please note that it will also be available on the Smithsonian Folkways website with closed captioning as well. Now, a year ago, Smithsonian Folkways launched its new Asian Pacific America series. I'm so proud of it and to be some small part of it. And this series is featuring really exceptional contemporary voices and sonic expressions, including music, across diverse musical genres. And some of the albums in this series reinterpret traditional repertoires and styles, but others are in really thrillingly contemporary styles. But all of these albums speak directly to collective experiences through song, and you're going to hear that up and down and back and forth today. Now, the featured artists in the series expands the U.S.-American soundscape through really brilliantly creative explorations of identity, community, history, diaspora. There's going to be a real range of histories represented in the series. And the series is a really deep collaboration with the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, and it's funded in part with federal support from the Smithsonian Asian Pacific Initiatives Pool, administered by the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, and we're so grateful to them for all of their support to date. Today, we invite you to participate in this conversation, depending on what platform you're watching from, whether Facebook or YouTube. The live chat is there, so please use it. Drop in your questions, your responses. We welcome all of that. But now, importantly, let's welcome our guests for today. Nobuko Miyamoto is a musician, singer, and dancer, and community organizer. Nobuko, you are so many different things. She is a legend in Asian American and Japanese American circles. She's one of the co-creators of the iconic 1973 album, A Grain of Sand, which was recorded on Paradon, and it's now part of the Smithsonian Folkways catalog. We'll be touching on that today. Quetzal Flores has been deeply involved. Hello, Quetzal. Has been deeply involved in Smithsonian Folkways for some years now as a board member, as a recording artist. And his latest album just dropped. It's titled Puentes Sonoros. It's gorgeous. Congratulations, Quetzal. It's a really beautiful album.
Thank you.
And our third panelist is Derek Nakamoto, who is a veteran producer, composer, and performer. Hi, Derek. These three artists have known one another for a really long time, for quite a while at this point. And in my opinion, the album like really reflects that. It's just like so obvious. It's so evident. So there's a lot to celebrate. Let's start our conversation, huh? For sure, the release of this album, 120,000 Stories, and Quetzal's new album, and the June release of Nobuko's memoir. More on that as we proceed. 2021 is already looking like a pretty good year, in my humble opinion. And I'm guessing that in the live chat, links to some of the things that we're going to be mentioning are going to pop up. So be sure to keep your eyes over there. So connections and collaborations. Right? It's all about connections and collaborations. That's the heart of this album, its content and how it was produced. And so today we're going to be talking about the making of the album, how the three of you did it together. So before we actually start the conversation, and I've got like questions that I'm dying to ask you all, let's share a video clip that shows, it features one of the songs that's on the album. But you're also going to see behind the scenes glimpses of who and what went into the making of the album. But before we run the video, Nobuko, tell us a little about the song that we heard coming in. It's the title song for the album, right? Yeah.
Yes, well, obviously the 120,000 Stories is based on the number of Japanese Americans who were imprisoned during World War II. But also the number represents the untold stories, the many untold stories that we have that need to be communicated, that need to be expressed, that connect our communities together, and to show the human connection that we have with each other. So I hope it's for everyone.
What does 120,000 refer to?
The number of Japanese Americans that were in camp. Yes, during World War II.
Right. So that was a song you heard as we came in. The song we're about to hear, I'll ask Nobuko a question about it after you've heard it and seen some of this lovely footage of the making of the album. That's such a great video. And I should say it was made by Ken Honjo, right? And we saw little glimpses of any number of the artists that are featured on this album. And I had the great good luck to be in the studio on 2 of those long afternoons as you all were working hard on this thing. What a gift that was. Nobuko, tell us about the song we heard behind it. What time is it on the clock of the world?
So that song came out of that wonderful sound that Juan Perez makes with the turbo diddly, this handmade instrument that was a cigar box. But the sound of that, and really it was sort of a rare situation for me because it started with that. Where usually my songs start with the idea or the song and the music comes to the words and the music start together. But this, he had the whole thing laid out, and I sort of came in and found these words, what time is it, on the clock of the world, which comes from Grace Lee Boggs, the philosopher activist from Detroit, who really was early in 2000, brought me to Detroit to work on a project and exposed me to urban gardening, to the whole idea of using, changing the environment from the ground up through urban gardening in Detroit. So it just shifted my feelings about, and my knowledge about where change was going to come from and what we had to integrate into our activism.
Yeah. Right. Your work with Grace Lee Boggs was really deep and sustained, also with Yuri Kochiyama. And for those of you who are watching, I encourage you to read Nobuko's memoir when it comes out in June of this year, because she writes at great length about her collaborations and her learning from Yuri Kochiyama and Grace Lee Boggs. Yeah, it's really, really special. Derek, Quetzal, I want to turn to the two of you. You are the producers for this album. I'm not sure that everyone always understands what it means to be a producer. We also hear you playing on a number of these tracks, each of you, both of you. So could you tell us a little bit about your roles in this album and your relationship with Nobuko? Because we saw in that video, talking with each other, right? There's a lot of discussion and interaction that went into what we hear. Yeah. Please tell us about your work on the album. Quetzal, why don't you start?
I was hoping Derek could start.
Derek, why don't you start?
Well, it was an honor to work on the record, and a unique opportunity for Nobuko after all the work that she's done over decades to have this opportunity to be reflective of it. It mirrors the work that she did do and has done in the past, which is great, and also new tunes that she's an active artist, always creating. For me, the excitement of having a chance to work along with Quetzal, that's mind-blowing. These are folks through Nobuko that I would never be aware of, but that who do music that's really close to my heart. So my big job is just being a facilitator, making sure, understanding what her vision was for the songs and how we collectively could make it happen.
Derek, how long have you known Nobuko, give or take?
Oh, no, since 1983.
1983 is when we did the first album together.
Yes.
Best of Both Worlds. Yeah.
Which I would just quickly add, Nobuko was the first artist to give me an opportunity to produce a full album. And it was a tremendous amount of trust, and it was a lot of fun. And that was the beginning of a long-time relationship. And it wasn't music, but I think more as a friend, mentor. It's been very rich. So to have an opportunity to do this record now, it's like everything came full circle.
Yeah, true.
That's it, right? This is not the first time around the block for the two of you together, working on projects, far from it. And Derek, you're often there as a friend. I mean, I've seen you, helping to wash the dishes at Senchin Buddhist Temple's, kitchen after an event, right? You're there. You're part of the
I'm
circle.
a real good dishwasher. I love being in the kitchen. I love being in the kitchen.
Yeah. So Derek and Nobuko go back. Quetzal, you have your own history with Nobuko.
Sure. Yeah. So my relationship with Nobuko isn't quite as long, but I feel like within the last, what has it been, 10 years or so, that we've done a lifetime of work together.
Yeah.
And when Nobuko brought the idea forth, I instantly thought about, so in white supremacist capitalist society systems, elders are typically put aside because they're no longer able to, quote unquote, produce labor that is viable, et cetera, right? And so when Nobuko brought this forth, it was initially an idea of doing a retrospective, right? And so I thought it was important to ask Nobuko some questions about her vision and her output. And it turns out she had a bunch of songs and a bunch of ideas. And I was like, then why aren't we doing new stuff? Why aren't we doing, or even if we do old stuff, let's reimagine it, And Derek was on the same page, and they had a conversation. And so when we all got together, it was really easy to really think through what this was going to be like. And then the second piece is within a space like this, there's a lot of respect and love and admiration for each other's work. And, not everybody can have the same role, right? Nobuko needed to be the artist and let go of certain things that were not necessarily hers to hold in this space. And so, and then between Derek and I think it was important for us to really quickly negotiate like roles. And Derek really played the role of the lead producer per se, and I was hopefully I was helpful in playing that supportive role to Derek. But I really want to recognize that Derek did a lot of work on this album, and that and it's not to say I didn't contribute because I did, but I also I recognize that this is an important thing to say in this moment, and that without any of our pieces, that this record would not have happened. And this goes for Abe and Juan and all the musicians, Tailana and and so on and so forth. The singers, oh my gosh. And so each piece, each little grain, was essential to the construction of this beautiful document that now we get to benefit from.
Right. I mean, the word producing hardly begins to describe, the intensity and sustained nature of the conversations, that went into this. Nobuko, I can tell you want to add to that.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm not a touring artist, and I'm not a recording artist, really. I've made a few albums, but I don't see myself, I'm not in the studio all the time. So, and most of my role has been in the last 40 or 50 years, really, is trying to get other people to do things and creating works that other people can perform in or actually create together. So this was sort of a weird moment for me, a rare moment where I could actually be an artist, and that they allowed me that moment of support where I could just let go. And it was not easy, actually. I'm not used to being in that space and having the time to really look and dig deep into my own stories. So I'm really grateful for being able to do this at this moment in my life where I'm still strong, but I'm not. But I am an OG. I'm, and I've been there and done a lot. And but I still feel like I have a lot to do in the future. So I'm grateful for all of you, Deborah, you and Sojin and everyone behind the scenes who made this album happen. So thank you.
And I should say, right back at you, because anybody who knows you knows that you never, I mean, as an artist, you have your vision, you have your ideas, but you rarely just sort of go off into a room and close the door and just come out with something. You like collaboration, you like discussion, you like processing things with trusted friends, right?
Yes.
The album features, again, it's 2 CDs, folks, and the songs on the album cover almost 50 years by my
yes, it is.
From the early 1970s right up to 2020. There's a bunch of songs that Nobuko wrote right in 2020. So it's really the span of her work to date, to all intents and purposes. I want our audience to hear another song. I want them to hear a song from the CD 2, which contains a lot of your earlier work. So very, very quickly, tell us about the song Free the Land, which we're about to hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this came about because of Yuri Kochiyama, basically. And when Yuri would take you someplace, you never knew where you were going to go, but you knew it was going to change you. And so she brought me into the movement in New York City, where I met Chris Ijima. And I want to bring him into this space because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for Chris. And his genius with song and his ability to take complicated political things and create, crystallize them. And so with Free the Land, Yuri wanted us to sing for a rally for the Republic of New Africa, which is an New African organization that was based on Malcolm's philosophy. And we met with 2 brothers, Matulu Shakur and Attila Ayubi. And they brought us into this space with them and presented us to their group in this rally in front of the United Nations. And I think at first people looked at us like, what is this? But after we sang We Are the Children, people just opened up and the song just, connected. And so it started a long, long journey, and that journey exists till today in my life as a mother of Attila's child, and also as a friend of and a comrade of Matulu Shakur, who has spent more than 30 years in prison as a political prisoner. So one of the salutations that they always used was free the land. Free the land. Every time they would meet, they would always say, free the land. And so Chris brought this, we've got to do a song about this. And in the studio, Barbara Dane produced our first record. And in the studio, Attila and Mutulu were in the studio with us singing background, as well as Chris, Charlie, and myself. And we did this song, I think we did it in 1 or 2 takes. So it's very spontaneous.
Everyone, I should note that the beautiful liner notes to this album contain some words from Mutulu Shakur. It took some doing to get them, but he's represented in the album in several different ways. Yeah, absolutely. Let's hear a bit of the song, huh?
Remember what Mama said, you reap what you have sown. We don't want a piece of your pie, but we want to bake our own. Free the land, ooh, you got to free the land. You've got to free the land, ooh, you got to free the land. Bottom
That's a deep song. Deep song.
You gotta move when you hear that song.
Exactly. Hey, audience members, if you just joined us, I should say you're listening to a conversation with Nobuko Miyamoto and her two producers for her recent Smithsonian Folkways album, 120,000 Stories, recently released. In a moment, we're going to hear another song. We're going to keep the songs coming. I should thank the audience for the really great questions and comments that you're dropping into the live chat. I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing. We're about to listen to a new version of Somos Asiáticos, another song from the early 1970s, featured on the album A Grain of Sand from 1973. But for this album, you chose to record a new version of it, which in my opinion is rather different and quite beautiful and really of the moment. Quetzal, could you tell us a bit about how you think about collaboration, generally, because I know you've thought extensively and deeply about it, and also about this song? You have a very intentional process. Tell us a bit about it.
Collaboration is a dialogical practice. It requires lots of conversation, lots of arriving to shared agreements, sharing, like having shared values, shared aesthetics. It's right in line with the idea of traditional arts practice. And this is what it's about, right? It's not about one person's vision, but how a vision can connect to multiple communities, multiple spaces, multiple perspectives. And the song "We Are the Children" is iconic already before this. And I have to really hand this over to Derek, because it was a lot of his vision in redoing this, but we certainly did talk about the need to if we were going to record older stuff, to reimagine it in a way that was gonna create new visions or new pathways into understanding this song and what it means. Derek?
I think we thought, I just saw a question sideline popping up about roles of producers.
Yeah.
And this is the beauty of myself and Quetzal. Even though we had to work separately because of logistics or schedules, in my mind, I could hear Quetzal's voice. Quetzal was the high bar of excellence. So anything that I did or do, I could hear his voice in the back of my head. No. Oh, interesting. That connection was there. And then my connection was to Nobuko. And when we're reimagining the songs, how do you feel about that lyric today after having performed or lived it since its inception? And it was always reflective in nature, and we would talk about how the lyric maybe was appropriate, or the intention of it was written maybe 20, 30 years ago, and how the lyric is still relevant today. And sometimes it's bittersweet, sometimes it's a reflection of beauty or a golden moment. And that's what we tried to incorporate in the reimagined version of the songs.
Also,
go ahead.
Okay. Juan Perez, bass player, was also very key in having the sense of feel for the song, that he just knew where it needed to lie. Yes. And I just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
And having Black voices was intentional in this. We had this conversation, and to be able to connect what this song is talking about, the struggle this song is talking about, is absolutely connected to Black struggle, connected to Indigenous struggle, et cetera, et cetera. And so to have Black voices on this was by design, and it was powerful. The moment that moment, well, Derek was conducting, and the singers were there laying it down. It all came together for me. It was very emotional, and it's like those moments where your ideas, your hopes are affirmed, your sense of struggle, and the reason why you do it is affirmed, and all these things come together in one moment and really remind you that you're where you're supposed to be and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
It's true. It's our story shared. Yeah, the hope was that the realization that it's everybody's story, and it connects all of us.
But also it's a way. I think music is a way into worlds. It's a way of seeing and moving in a world that maybe you wouldn't ordinarily be in. And that's how I sort of, what music has done for me as an activist and a music lover is that it's opened doors for me and doors of hearts, and moments that you share with people that would never have happened if it wasn't for a song. So I want to introduce this song Somos Asiáticos. Well, first of all, it was such to be able to redo this song with the Quetzal family, with Dailana and Martha and Juan, and it's just like sort of like was a dream come true for me, because I just said, to be able to do it with you, and have Joey De Leon in there bringing up our roots in the field, with his percussion. I mean, that's like taking it to another level. So let me tell you where this song came from. And it came from the streets of New York, really, when Chris and me and my brother Bob, we were involved in the squatters movement, which was right on my street in 91st and the Upper West Side of New York, where they were moving out poor people to move in rich. They called it urban removal. And a lot of these buildings were sitting empty for years. So finally, this group El Comité saw it, and they started organizing folks and fixing these buildings up in the middle of the night and moving families in. And so the city was afraid to bring the police to pull them out because it wouldn't look good. And so these families, we had 200-300 families living in our neighborhood, squatters. And when I saw that, I said, gee, we sort of need an Asian American drop-in center on the Upper West Side. So El Comité helped us take over a storefront on 88th and Amsterdam. And it began an organization called Chickens Come Home to Roost, because we wanted this name that was strong and revolutionary, based on what Malcolm X, said, Chickens Come Home to Roost. Yes, that's the name. But El Comité would say, hey, can the chickens come and help us take over a building? Hey, can the chickens sing for us? We became El Pollo. But anyway, we also took over a coffee house. We made a coffee house, and singers from all over Latin America and performers would come and perform there. Suni Paz was one, Estrella Arau, I think her name was, from Cuba, people from Cuba, Dominican Republic, etc. And we were listening to Nueva Canción. And the lyrics, the lyrics. And so this made me feel this is where we belong. This is where our music belonged in this genre, in a way, because it was music of the struggle. And Chris, again, came up, well, we got to write something in Spanish. So it happened to be that my roommate used to be one of the young lords. And so she helped us with the translation. So the lyrics are simple. We are Asians who like to sing for the people, but we speak the same language because we struggle for the same things. the language of liberty, the language of love, the language of community. This song sort of opened up this world of communication between Asian Americans and Latinos in New York City. Mm-hmm. We started doing more gigs for Latino groups than we were for Asian groups, actually. and it showed, the power of song. It really showed that community could be created in 3 minutes. Or over a period of many years,
Let's hear a bit of the song. Let's hear a bit of the song. In fact, this is the new version we're going to hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nosotros somos asiáticos, nos gusta cantar para la gente, hablamos la misma lengua, porque luchamos por las mismas cosas. La lengua de libertad.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah. Audience, if you just joined us, we're talking with Nobuko Miyamoto about her new album, 120,000 Stories, and with us are her two producers, Derek Nakamoto and Quetzal Flores. There's so many songs, really all the songs on this album, this double album, that are, full of reminders that none of us are free until all of us are free, right? And so very deliberately, some of the older songs that Nobuko wrote 40, 50 years ago have been reimagined on this album, like the one you just heard, drawn into the present. Now, one of the very newest songs on this album, like written, a month or two before you went into the studio, right, is Not Your Butterfly, which is also the title of your memoir. Yeah. So let's turn to that song. And Derek, you're all over this album in multiple ways. As I mentioned when we were talking before the show began, you're on almost every track. And I figured out that you're playing piano and Wurlitzer electric piano and B3 and synth bass and. You're like, you're very present in this album as a musician. But you've also spent a really large part of your career working as an arranger and as a composer, right? Behind the scenes, and often for some really big names, I might add, commercial artists, big names, as opposed to the big names in our community like Nobuko and Quetzal, right? So tell us a little bit about how all of this relates or compares to the work that you've done with Nobuko for many decades.
I've found there's a beautiful side in which I'm grateful for in working with the major corporate record funded acts and the artists, and in that process I recognized the possibilities with means. And when I met Nobuko, an artist like her, I saw another side. It's like, well, what would it be like if these artists are really doing something special? And there's heart there, and it's the connection to what inspired them. It became more motivational for me to do my work. And I thought, God, okay, here's the connection. I'm going to take what I learned here, and I'm going to go over here and provide. Whatever I learned, I tried to transfer it to a community, places where I thought they would not have access. and I felt like I was a conduit. It's not that I knew more than any one or the other. It's just experience and relaying that. So I found more opportunity to create and to really work with artists from working with Nobuko. Because I loved it. You know, she's writing about something that is relevant, that means something to her, that if done correctly will facilitate the message that she's trying to create. And I went, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do.
Well, he always makes it possible to sound better than I would have had without him.
I think it's there. It's funny because I think Nobuko, I've always looked at you as being an artist, and it was odd to hear that you felt like you were not an artist. So but you are. Everything from looking at your home, the way you do everything, the way you dress, there is an art. You live it.
Yeah.
And that was so inspirational. It has been so inspirational to me and my family. So working on this record is musically celebrating that.
I'd like to add something very quickly. So I will say this about producing. So often it's the team that you assemble across the board, the engineer, the musicians, producers, everybody across the board has to be invested in the project, right? Yes. And has to know their role very clearly and be able to play their role well. And in particular, these musicians, and every song is very different, right? But for Butterfly, for example, the musicians, everybody understood how to communicate, how to share the space, and how to support Nobuko in really lifting up this message and this idea in a very articulate and uncompromising and cultural way.
Yes.
I just love hearing the two of you talk about this because the generosity of spirit that you bring into the room is just so evident, and the sense of shared project, shared struggle, shared vision, right? It really comes through in how the three of you have worked together, lifting one another up. And that really comes down to lifting up the community, right? Or our communities, plural. I'm getting all kind of stirred up here in a really nice way. Nobuko, tell us a bit about Not Your Butterfly, which we're going to hear next.
So, of course, Butterfly, Madam Butterfly has been this, thing that we've had to get over for the last 100 years.
We being who?
Asian women have had to, live in the shadow of this image, whether it was the world of Susie Wong or Ms. Saigon or on and on and on. Personal relationships, how men looked at us as the perfect, obsequious wife or whatever, Anyway, I saw this sign of Madame Butterfly playing in here in LA, and I said, "Oh my God, I have to make a response to this." And at first it was the song was "Kill the Butterfly," but then I said, "No, maybe that's not that." I'm an environmentalist; I can't say that. So it came out with a little bit more humor, and actually it became a more personal story of who I was and where I came from, and my family. My great-grandmother, who was a samurai woman who ruled the family. And so anyway, yes. So this is my version of Butterfly, Not Your Butterfly.
Not Your Butterfly. Also the title of her forthcoming memoir. Let's hear a bit of the song.
I'm not your butterfly. I'm not your picture bride. I am a samurai woman who holds up half the sky. I haven't bowed my head. I haven't bound my feet. or the heat, I'm not afraid to leave. I am. I have crossed waters wide, I have climbed mountains high, I carried you inside my heart when I took a stride. I am your memory, stories of you and me, moment of breaking free, so you can be, you can be. I am, I am, I am, hey, I am.
It's a good song. Yeah, it's a good song. Hey, I think it's time to see what the audience is thinking about and asking about and, wondering about at this point. Yeah, I mean, we've really enjoyed seeing the various little things that have flashed up on our screen. We had some questions early about how do you begin visioning an album of this kind? It's not your first album, Nobuko, but this one, had a slightly different, kind of it needed to do certain things. It needed to carry forward your personal history in a slightly different way than your earlier albums, I would say. How did you first start thinking about this album? And I should say, in the spirit of full disclosure, that I originally was encouraging you to simply do pull together a lot of your older songs, some of them unpublished at that point. And that's not what you wanted to do. Could you talk a bit about how you were thinking about it?
Well, I have a list on my piano, of new songs that I've written, that I haven't done anything with, and so I looked at that list and I said, then I have a list, of songs from the old stuff, and looked at that and I went, how do I figure out what do we put in here? It's a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. What can tell the story of the work and the communities and this journey, not only my journey, but the journey of my community, and the walk that I've done with and lived with other communities. How can I tell that story? So it really was about telling the big story, in a way, a story of my life that encompasses and moved out into so many other communities, and that have my life being enriched by so many communities. And so it wasn't easy. It was a process of elimination, really, to get distilling to find out what is the essence of this album, and what do we put in and what do we leave out. It was not an easy decision. Some of these were really hard decisions.
Oh, I'm sure. And I remember that you were initially a little concerned about that there were a number of different musical styles, that you felt that would work against a coherent album.
Yes,
right. It didn't concern me at all, but it concerned you.
I mean, there are two or three pieces in there that other people are doing the vocals. These are music that I wrote. Young A. Park tell her story in a musical that we did. And Jose de Vega, Billy Bino Tango, and of course Tom McNancy and Martha singing Bambutsu. So it's not all me singing, but it's my community.
It's your community, yeah. And another thing you did in a couple of these songs is really to connect past struggle to current struggle. For instance, in 120,000 Stories, it starts off being ostensibly a song about the World War II Japanese-American incarceration. And then you bring it right up to the moment. You bring it into a place where the song is addressing the detention camps around the border now, here, today.
And that song actually came from that, watching the, I think it was 2019 when Japanese Americans were trying to stop the children from being imprisoned at the border. And that's what started that song off. And then I said, no, I could connect these two stories of the past and the present. And the same thing with Somos Asiáticos. Somos is the direct, is the ancestor of Fandango Bon, the festival that Quetzal and I have been working on for the last 8 years. So it's all connected and, part of the process and the journey. It's not, it just didn't pop up out of nowhere.
Right, exactly. We had a question earlier about how did you manage to create this album during and under the pandemic? So many artists, have really been struggling this past year.
Absolutely.
That question's for all three of you, really. Specifically with this album, how were you able to do it? Because some of that work was before the pandemic hit, but nonetheless, can you speak to?
Yeah, most of the things were recorded just before the pandemic. And then the editing process or the mixing and all that stuff happened during the pandemic. And the first video that we did, What Time Is It on the Clock of the World, was right after and so I was masked in that first video. So, and then we've just been, this is a good time to share actually the work that we've done, because we can have intimacy in communicating like we are right now, even though we're in in different spaces.
We did, however, record a whole new song that's not a part of this album, but that is a part of the Alliance for California Traditional Arts, Sounds of California, Sounds of Boyle Heights, called, what did you call it? What was the final title? Well, but it's basically about Boyle Heights being a place of bridges.
Yes.
And Nobuko, Derek, a lot of the same characters worked on this song as well.
Yeah.
So it's like an extension of this album.
Right.
We were,
and we did it. We had to do it distanced in the studio. Wear the mask in the studio, take it off when you're singing, put it back on. So, but we were distanced.
I think that's the beauty of technology, because in our music community, I see people struggling with this half that are struggling, wanting or missing the way things were done. And there's the other half that just goes, okay, this is the hand that's dealt with us. What technology is out there that allows us to do what we want to do? So, Quetzal, myself, we've developed our workspaces to a pretty competitive level prior to the pandemic. And because of budget, we can still produce a very high quality of music within our spaces, thanks to technology. So I feel the universe blessed us with the timing of being able to track what needed to be done as an ensemble prior to the pandemic. And a third person, I think Quetzal, we should mention, who was integral to our production team was Chris Sorum. And the Nest, oh my God, Chris was the additional member of the band. Whenever we had a thought, wanted to do something, the mic was in place. The board it just moved seamlessly, quickly, with the least amount of conversation. And when the pandemic set in, because all of us had that connection, we were able to work distantly effectively, because we knew it was just like Quetzal was right here, Chris was right here. In my opinion, there might have been a few little juggling acts, but there is nothing lacking in what we did in the quality. The
also collaboration. We were able to have Kenny Endo fly in at just the right moment to do two songs with us, Stampopo and Ichigo Ichie, which we didn't hear today. So, we're sort of used to this kind of elastic way of working anyway. So it's just a little bit more of a stretch during this period of time, but we know how to be very dexterous.
Quetzal, I could see a thought go through your head. Were you going to say something?
No, because then I'll just go off on some tangent about improvisation.
And resourcefulness.
Absolutely. Yeah, so there's a question in the box.
There's a question in the box. We actually need to wrap. But Nobuko, do you want to very, very, very quickly address this question about urban gardening and a connection between gardening and music? And I would add community.
Well, that all came from Grace Lee Boggs and being in Detroit. And again, I brought that into Fandango Bon. That was one of the things that it wasn't just about dancing in a circle. It was about dancing in a circle because we're on this earth. We need to take care of this earth, and so the environment became another subject that was integral to Fandango Bon. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. And thanks to Fandango Obon and your attention to the environment, Nobuko, through your music, through your community-based activities, I now do bokashi composting. So, the things we learn from music and beyond, right? Yes. I just love talking with the three of you. I loved watching you in the studio. I learned so much from the three of you. Now and forever, I am your greatest fan. And I really want to thank the three of you for speaking with me and for sharing your ideas, with our audience today. Thank you to Derek Nakamoto, to Quetzal Flores, and of course to Nobuko Miyamoto. Thank you.
My gratitude to all of you. I couldn't do this without you, really. Thank you so much.
And that's Nobuko. Yeah, she always thinks about the connection to community and to others and to her collaborators. Thank you, audience, for coming, for participating, for asking your questions, for responding as you did through the program. I want to close with some really heartfelt thank yous to Asia Ayubi, who is on the album and helped a lot with the PR for this event, Jonathan Williger, Laura Shanahan, Beshu Gadamu, Sabrina Motley, Sarah Ruffman, Caitlin Haas, Diane Nutting, Elisa Huff, and of course, the amazing Sojin Kim, who curated this album and curated this program today. Thank you, Sojin. So, audience, please follow Smithsonian Folkways and Folklife pages here on Facebook. You can get notifications about future events. The Folklife Festival is going to be remote this year with lots of amazing remote events. So please look for news about that. Find us also on Instagram and on YouTube. Please visit the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage website, which is just like popping with good material, and come back here for our next program. You can also follow Smithsonian Asian Pacific America Center and all of the collaborators on the Folkways series. We are going to go out with a song. Of course, we're going to go out with a song. And this particular song is an Asian American anthem. It is well known in the Asian American community. We Are the Children, recorded in 1973, written and performed by Nobuko Miyamoto and Chris Ijima. Thank you so much for coming.
We are the children of the migrant worker. We are the offspring of the concentration camp, sons and daughters of the railroad builder who leave their stamp on America. We are the children of the Chinese waiter, born and raised in the laundry room. We are the offspring of the Japanese gardener who leave our stamp on America. Sing a song for ourselves. What have we got to lose. We've got to sing the song for ourselves. We've got the right to choose. We've got the right to choose.